Oh my god.
I recently decided to start a Flesh Eater Quartz army. I wanted my ghouls to look as though the death magic they're subjected to has been sucking all the life from them. I wanted this paint scheme to be cool to look at yet easy to replicate on large model quantities and to use painting techniques that anyone can do. I am myself in no regards a professional painter, but hey, there's always room to learn. I primed the model using Color Forge White Bone, but any off-white primer will do here. To start painting, I mixed Luxion Purple Contrast Paint and Contrast Medium in a 1:4 ratio, meaning for every drop of the purple, I added 4 drops of medium. This thinned the purple down from a highly pigmented wash to a more traditional one. I applied this mixture to one limb section of the model's flesh, then quickly washed my brush free of paint, and used it while it was damp to feather and remove the paint until virtually the only purple left was what was in the deep recesses. I went bit by bit, section by section, applying and removing the wash before it had a chance to start drying. Contrast paint dries very quickly, so being a bit diligent here is important. I'm also careful to not let the mix pool too much, since I want this first layer to be very subtle, but if there are any areas where it pools or stains excessively, I go over them with Wraithbone to bring back the off-white base coat. I take special care around the face since that's an important area I definitely don't want to obscure with too much wash. In the end, the model showed just a small bit of purple in the deep recesses. Moving to our next color, I took Agrax Earthshade and applied it straight from the pot with no thinning. I'm doing the exact same thing I did with the previous color, applying it on one section, then washing my brush and feathering it away. Only this time, I do want the wash to stain and color the surface of the flesh, and to also collect in the recesses to bring out tons of definition. Agrax has a bad reputation for coffee staining, so I'm keeping my eye out for that, and applying more Wraithbone if it gets out of hand. This wash is going to help with the dead skin look I want later on, while also helping to confirm that this was once a human, and they've just been tainted and corrupted by death magic. A predominant part of this model is the skin graft that the ghoul is wearing. For this, I apply a base coat of Vallejo Model Color Beige Red. This is my absolute favorite paint for peachy Caucasian skin tones, but it definitely needs a couple of coats. I apply this to all the flayed skin, almost forgetting to hit the loincloth, and I also base coat the decapitated head the ghoul is holding with this color. After a couple coats, it's solid and looks good. Next up is bones, and there's a decent amount on this guy. There's the rib cage that's part of the base, a couple on his axe, and there's even some small bony spikes sticking through his skin, so don't miss those. There's also this skull that the butt of the axe is resting on, which incidentally is another bone. There's also this one head that it's resting on, which I quickly just threw a wash of Agrax over and kind of just called it good there. I didn't get the best angle to show me actually applying it, but trust that it's there amongst the rest of all the death going on. I moved on to the brown bits, and for these I used another one of my favorite paints from the model color line. This one is German Camel Black Brown. I love this paint so much that I have a bad habit of, if I see it on the shelves of any hobby store I go to, I typically just buy another bottle, and now I have like 5 or 6 unopened bottles in my paint drawer. Don't worry, I'll use all of them fairly quickly. Anyways, I used this to color the wood of the axe as well as one of the heads on the base. Following that, I painted all the metal bits on the miniature. I used Vallejo Model Color Duraluminum, and this stuff definitely needs a second coat. It looks great though. There aren't that many metal bits on this model. There's the axe itself, of course, but other than that, it's just a spike sticking out of the skull on top of the axe, and this little hook that's piercing a hand from the flayed skin on his back. The only part of the model I painted gray is the rock on the base, and I used, you guessed it, another favorite from the model color range. This one is German Gray. Lastly for base coats is black, and I use the only black paint I can recommend from any brand for being truly black. Model color Black 7950. It's amazing stuff. This was used to base coat the wraps on the axe, the hair of the severed head, and the claws on the model's feet. After all the base coats, he's starting to kind of look like a ghoul. The next step in my painting process is highlights. When I highlight, I typically don't use different colors than the base coats. I just mix 2 parts of that base color to 1 part white. The white of choice is Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White, another paint I recommend as being the best of its class. I mix this with all my base coats and just go around each section of the model picking out the raised edges and prominent points. There's not much of a secret to this. Just be patient and a bit more controlled than you normally would. That's definitely something I need to work on though. One thing I did do during the highlight phase is base coat the hair on one of the base skulls with the same gray I was using to highlight the rock. The rock is also the only part of the model I dry brush highlights onto. I feel like rocks look especially good with a bit of dry brushing. I could have used that same gray to highlight the wraps in the hair, but I decided to use a mix of the model color black and white. Make sure to accidentally rub off some of the rock base coat, get frustrated, and then repaint it. For the metal, I used Vallejo Game Color Silver since mixing the base color with white wouldn't really work here. Don't worry about these highlights looking too stark. It's going to be toned down with washes in the next step. For the first wash, I used Reikland Flesh Sage for all the peachy skin, including the severed head. I moved back to Agrax and used this on the skulls and the entirety of the axe. Wood, wraps, blade, everything. I washed the black and gray parts with Nuln Oil, and from there I moved on to my final wash. And this is where I make the skin look truly dead. For this I used Colia Green Shade. In this clip I applied it a little too heavy than desired, so I feathered it just a bit, but other than that I'm applying it liberally over each part of the skin. I want a good amount of color, staining, and shading here. This is the final wash for the skin, so it's important to get it to my liking. I made sure not to miss his cute little ears. If there are areas where the recesses aren't shaded as much as I want, I apply the shade in a pin wash fashion similar to the Agrax earlier. This wash is a combination of blue and green, and it really just helps sell how dead the model looks. Once that wash is completely dry, I applied a couple more select highlights to the skin graft using a 1-to-1 mix of the base color and white. I wanted to define the raised and prominent points just a bit more. I then did this for the axe wraps and the hair, using a bit of white and black mixed together, and mixed my bone color and white to highlight the skulls. At this point I realized I completely missed coloring the ghoul's tongue, so I base coated that with AK acrylic black red. I then moved on to picking out the teeth of the ghoul, and finally his eyes, and yeah. You can definitely tell face details are really not my strong point. I thought about redoing them and cleaning everything up, but after pondering on it, I decided against it. My reasoning for this is that I wanted to show that everyone makes mistakes in this hobby, and I also wanted to use this model as my starting point to compare to in the future. I really can only improve from here. That's one of the reasons I started Model Core actually. This project is supposed to double as a motivator to get me to paint more and to capture my progress as a painter. I did rebase the ghoul's tongue to cover the white paint I got on it though. That was bugging me far too much. This brought me to the funnest part of the model, adding blood. I won't go too in depth on how I got this blood mixture since I'm pretty much just copying the amazing tutorial from Darcy Bono, which I will link to so you all can check out her work. I'm starting with contrast medium on the model, then stippling on layers of Flesh Terror's red and Gore brown contrast paints, and then using contrast medium to diffuse and feather them out. I do this over and over in multiple layers until I get a result I'm happy with. The result looks incredible, and I use this on basically every model I paint where I want there to be blood. I do want some more shiny, fresh blood in little spots, so I took Tamiya Clear Red and added some black ink to it. The black ink will darken down the red, which is what I wanted, but I found that even a single drop of the ink will make it way too dark. You can see just how much it turns the red into more of a brown, which isn't good. So I cleaned my mixing cup, and this time I squeezed the pipette free of ink, and then basically just rubbed the side of the pipette on the edge of my mixing cup. This left behind barely half a drop of the ink, which yielded the color result I wanted. I then loaded a bit of the mixture onto an old brush and used my airbrush to blow air through the bristles. This caused the paint to splatter perfect sized spots of paint. Holding the model, the brush, and the airbrush with two hands wasn't the easiest task, however.
Oh my god. I just fucking blew paint all over my thing. Oh well.
Once I figured the best way to handle it, I sprayed this mix onto the axe to splatter a couple spots where I wanted there to be fresh blood. I also stippled it onto the other bloody parts of the model, again not forgetting those teeny tiny bone skewers in his skin. Using both of these blood applications yields a varied result I'm admittedly very happy with. The latter does create a decent mess though, so prepare your hobby space carefully and don't spray paint all over the place like I did. After this step, I applied some AK Muddy Ground texture paste to the base. This is another one of my go-tos, it's just so nice once it dries. When that happened, I dry brushed on the same color used to base coat the skulls, applied a wash of Agrax, and when that was dry, I used the bone highlight color to dry brush one final time. To finish off the base, I gave it the classic black rim. This just looks cleanest in my eyes, but a brown rim to match the texture wouldn't look bad here either. My final step is using some dirty down gore to add a trail of viscera from the severed head to the ghoul's mouth, as if he just took a bite out of it. This stuff is a bit difficult to work with since it's essentially just fast drying glue mixed with red paint, but when I was finally able to get it to the position I wanted, I loved the result. Yeah, that's fucking killer. I gave everything a matte varnish, applied gloss varnish to the gore and spots on the axe, and the model was done. This army is one that's been on the back burner in my brain for a while, and I finally decided to just go for it, and I'm really starting to love the results. I'm excited to see where the force goes and how I can improve as a painter from here on out. I have tons of other projects coming too. Kit bashes, more painting tutorials, everything. If there's anything you guys are curious about or want to see, please leave a comment below. I hope you enjoyed watching and saw something cool, or maybe something you'll add to your own hobby arsenal. Since I'm not the greatest painter, I'm open to any and all tips. Happy hobbying, and thanks for watching.